Why should you review your beneficiaries every single year, and how should you set them up? In this episode, we go into every detail.
To learn more about how to secure your retirement and all the different elements you need to know, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell so you'll be notified when we release episodes every Monday. We have helped hundreds of our clients gain clarity and get on the path to a great retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Secure Your Retirement Podcast. We are excited about today's topic. We actually have Nick Hymanson, who is another certified financial planner in our office with us on this episode. And this episode is really focused on beneficiary designations, but this all kind of comes out of a particular meeting that we do with our clients every year, which we call our financial planning strategy meeting. And there's a lot of work that goes into this meeting. There's a lot of things that come out of it. It's extremely beneficial. But I thought we could kind of start out, Nick, by if you could just kind of say, what is a financial planning strategy meeting and what kind of happens in there?
Yeah, so in the financial planning strategy meeting, we're covering a multitude of topics, things from how accounts have done over the last year. We're talking about beneficiaries, any new updates in terms of just daily living. So looking at, in all essence, a budget, so expenses and income, and making sure that we're withdrawing from the right place, or if we can turn on different sorts of income sources as well. That's a big discussion topic. So from the entire financial planning standpoint, we're using our retirement plan to take us through the conversation. And from there, we're kind of making decisions and having discussions on all of those different topics.
Yeah, one of the things that I talk to people a lot when we talk about financial planning and having a financial plan, which is this is all based around the financial plan, is that I compare it to a GPS system. And I always ask people, what do you think is the most important part of what you put into a GPS? And a lot of people very quickly will say the destination. And I say, yeah, that's a very important thing. But what if I'm trying to get somewhere, but yet I don't know where I'm at? Then that's problematic. I can't get somewhere if I don't know where I'm at. What this meeting does that Nick was just walking through is every year we're updating the location of where we're at. So we're basically updating account values. We're making sure that the income is right. Sometimes people get increases in their Social Security. Maybe they've got another piece of income or they've stopped getting a piece of income. Whatever that is, it just updates that location. So
yeah, also, and on top of that, because what we always talk about is that there's so many things when it comes to a retirement focused financial plan. It's not just about investing, but it's also where are we today, and what are the milestones that are ahead of us, whether that's decisions on Social Security, or maybe you're turning 65 and you've got Medicare approaching and you don't understand Medicare. Well, we have a Medicare person in-house now that's helping have those and guide those conversations. The estate plan side of things, so what happens to the money when you're not here, that's a topic of conversation as well, which kind of leads us into beneficiaries, because sometimes in a meeting we'll say, let's talk about beneficiaries, and they could say, well, my will's got that all handled. And unfortunately, that's not true, and that's not the way that we want to approach beneficiaries. A lot of the accounts that we accumulate over the years, we get to tie beneficiaries to them, like 401ks, IRAs. Those are the most common that the word beneficiary for. But you also have life insurance, and pretty much any account that has cash in it, even your bank accounts. What we talk about is the more beneficiary designations you can have added to account, the simpler the process is going to be when that terrible time comes and we have to start putting the estate in process. So Nick, how about this? Let's walk through, since we're now talking about beneficiaries. First of all, take us through what are we doing to prepare for this conversation around beneficiaries before the client even gets there?
Yeah, so before the meeting, our team is really looking at all of the accounts, all of the investment accounts, and for some, we're calling insurance companies and confirming who's listed as beneficiaries for primary beneficiary and contingent beneficiary, as well as their percentage allocations. So some people may have multiple beneficiaries listed under primary and contingent. Some people may have just a few. So for everyone, it's different, but we check over every single account insurance wise, we're likely calling them up, but then also on the Schwab side of things and any other types of accounts, we may have online access, but we're putting all of the accounts together. We're splitting it up by account so that we can basically present that in the meeting on looking at the different Schwab accounts as well as the different insurance company accounts as well. We can talk about that too.
Yeah, I think the importance thing here is that we do this every single year, and somebody might go, well, what would happen over the course of a year that would make this, need to be updated and all these different accounts? And I mean, we could tell you story after story. I'll tell you a couple. One, somebody actually had gotten a divorce, and they just hadn't remembered to fix all those beneficiaries. And so it doesn't matter who you're married to today. If you had your previous spouse listed, that's who would get the beneficiary. That's who would get it. There is no arguing that point. And so that's just something that's important. The other thing is sometimes there's changes that might occur. We've had scenarios where somebody has a child who maybe has gotten into some kind of legal issue, maybe some kind of a lawsuit, or maybe they are themselves are going into a divorce, and so they don't want money to go that direction, and so they're rethinking it. So we could go on and on and on as to why beneficiaries need to be changed, and I'm sure Nick, you might have a story or two as well. But let's talk a little bit about the structure and walk through what kind of things, like what kind of layers, as well as how you would actually put down beneficiary designations. And we can just take our most common. Let's say you got a couple, husband and wife. How would they think that through?
Yeah, so very likely, and I'll cover primary and contingent beneficiaries first. So very likely what we see for a couple is if they have an individual account, we're seeing the spouse as 100% primary beneficiary. So the primary beneficiary is who gets the money first. Where does it flow to first? And then the contingent beneficiary is if that person isn't there as the primary, that's where the funds will go to at that point. So it's basically, you can look at it as a backup if the primary is not there. But that's kind of the flow from an individual account standpoint. For joint accounts, it works a little differently. If you do have a spouse, in some cases, you're still listing, both people as primary beneficiaries. In other cases, just depending on the investment account, you're skipping kind of because you're both technically owners of that joint account. You're going and looking at, okay, we're both owners. Where does the funds flow after that point? So that's something to think about. And so on each account, it's just different situations and different beneficiaries listed.
Yeah, I had a phone call the other day with someone, and we were just talking about setting up a new account for him, and we were looking at how beneficiaries were set up on a different account that we managed for him, and I said, I don't see any contingent beneficiaries listed here. Now, in his case, he's got something set up to where he doesn't feel like he needs contingent beneficiaries because he wants it to go to his estate. I would say that's a rarity, but I think, understanding the difference between primary and contingent, me, Nick, and Raiden, we do this for a living. So to us, it's a second language, but to everyone out there listening, it's not a common thing. So that's why we want to take the time to explain that. But then also, Nick, you mentioned allocations, right? So with primary, sure, yeah, it makes perfect sense in a lot of cases that if I'm not here, my wife's going to be primary. She's going to get 100% of the money. But go to a scenario where now you've got a spouse, and then also now you've got 3 kids. How is it dictated as far as those 3 kids? If they're all 3 contingents, how's the money divvied up then?
Yeah, so in that scenario, for the most part, what we see is splitting up contingent beneficiaries by a third for each of the kids. So if there's 3 kids, you would pretty much have it 33% for each of the kids. And sometimes in certain cases, we'll have to give 0.01% to one of them just to make it an even 100%. But that's kind of how it would show in that sort of specific individual account. So it would go to the spouse first as 100% primary beneficiary, and then you'd have the 3 kids listed below that as contingents.
So let's talk about this scenario real quick, because we get this one every now and then. Let's say that I have two children. I'm going to make them my contingents. I'm going to put my spouse as my primary. I'm going to put my two children as contingents. And let's say that they each have children. And what I want is, if something were to happen to one of my children, I don't want that money to go to the other child and then get 100%. I really want it to go down to my grandchildren. So how do I do that? I just have to go through and name all them? Or then the question comes up, well, what if one's born and I didn't put it down? So how do I make sure that future grandchildren get it equal? What's a way or a strategy to do that?
Right. So a strategy to do that, and what it's called is per stirpes. So it's a specific beneficiary designation that you can put on your investment accounts that designates that the funds will flow to down that specific family tree. So in this case, we're talking about two kids, and let's just say it's 50-50 split evenly. If one of the kids is no longer there, but the designation on that kid as 50% beneficiary is per stirpes, that 50% of the funds will flow down their family tree to their kids, without any need to list them on the account. Just as long as it's listed as per stirpes, that's kind of how you keep it split 50-50, divided by the two families basically.
Yeah, and I would say per stirpes, which by the way, it's spelled because it's a tricky word, PER, and then the next word is stirpes, STIRPES. If you're jotting it down, and check, you should always check your beneficiaries. That's the whole point of this episode. But check if you have per stirpes, if that is your intention for the money to flow downwards the hierarchy of the family, versus what the other one is called is per capita, which is what Nick was talking about earlier. Go back to the 50-50 split of the two kids. And if one of the kids isn't there, per capita means instead of it going to that kid's kids in all essence, it would go across to the other sibling. So the 50% that they were supposed to get would go shift over to their sibling rather than going down to their family lineage. So per capita versus per stirpes, it's I think an important distinction to understand. A lot of people don't know that per stirpes is out there, but I think it's pretty powerful. It saves a lot of the legwork of updating all these beneficiary forms every time a kid is born or a grandchild is born, and it makes it a lot smoother as far as what your intentions are, which is keeping it down the lineage versus per capita going across the lineage of your own kids. So,
and I was just going to say on that point, just real quick before we hit to another topic, is just so you understand, if I have a child who has 4 children, right? I got 4 grandchildren. If I say per stirpes, it automatically equally gives it to each grandchild. So I don't have to worry about the percentages. It's just going to split it up 25% to each grandchild equal. Now, if I did want it to be a different percentage, I have a grandchild I love more than the others or has a bigger need than the others, I can't use per stirpes. I have to list those children and put the actual percentages there for that particular lineage, which you can do. So if I have that situation, I've got one who I don't want to have as much or whatever it might be. I was kidding about the loving one more than the other, but there are scenarios where somebody would say this person doesn't need the money. Maybe they've already I've got one that decided to do something that doesn't make a lot of money. I got another one who is a brain surgeon, and they make a really good income, and I don't want it to go equal that way. So we can use that as a tool. One other quick tool before we move on, I just want to speak about this real quick, is the other element. If I have the per stirpes language, and let's say that I left my IRA, which is all taxable, to my child, and let's say that my child now is older and they're making a really good income, they have the right to disclaim a portion of their inheritance. And what that means is that they could disclaim it. It would then go down to the grandchildren, and they would get that, and they would then pay their tax rate. And so that can be a very big tax advantage. They get to make that decision in the moment. You don't have to make that ahead of time. But by having the per stirpes, you're able to set that up. I'm sorry, Marcia, I cut you off there because I wanted to hit that topic.
No, that's really all I had. I think we've talked about beneficiaries quite a bit. Obviously, there are things outside of beneficiaries that you want to think about as well. And we've done several podcasts on trusts and whether or not you need a trust or a will All these things I think are very important to be talking about every single year. Are my beneficiaries up to date? Is my will in the right place that it should be, or does my trust need updating? Because the fact of the matter is, we see it all the time. Life changes. There's divorce, there's death, there's new kids that are born, and so you want to be thinking about this on a regular basis, because this is, your retirement is one of the biggest assets that you have, and if you're going to leave some of it behind, you want to make sure it's being done properly. There's a lot more that goes into financial planning. Our goal is to bring Nick on from time to time to talk more about some of the things that we talk about in financial planning strategy meetings, whether it's around tax conversations or investment strategies or income planning or withdrawal strategies, all these different things. We want to do it in short snippets so as not to overwhelm. But thanks, Nick, for being here. And that's all I've got.
All right, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to go to the website, top right-hand corner, click on schedule call. Our calendar comes right up. You can click on that. And we're glad to hop on a call, answer any questions you've got about this topic or any other topic. But thank you very much for listening. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
We hope this video has given you some confidence and clarity as you plan for a worry-free life in retirement. But what else do you need? We have created a complimentary video course called 3 Keys to Secure Your Retirement. This video walks you through step-by-step what you need to do to get ready for retirement. You can also check out our podcast called Secure Your Retirement. You can subscribe below.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.